Hi, this is Nate Schulte again with another exciting episode of Discovering Battles with Nate. Today on this episode, we are actually going to be talking about one of the most major battles in the American Revolutionary War, the Battle for King's Mountain, which took place on October 7th, 1780 in the northern part of South Carolina. Now, what was so special about this battle was that, well, the South was pretty much where a lot of the Loyalists were supporting the British. And the reason being is because, according to one of my sources, it was because of Charleston being, sieged and attacked and captured by the British, and a lot of some people back in the colonial days, around the time of the Revolutionary War, was pretty much because they wanted to make sure they weren't going to be traitors to the British. And a lot of the people that were loyal to Britain thought that America was not able to govern itself. And since they were our allies during the French and Indian War, we need to remain faithful to them. But many people disagreed with that. And that's one of the things that led to this being, almost like a pre-Civil War. Now, for the battle, like I said, we will be discovering about King's Mountain. The leaders for this were, the Scottish general was Patrick Ferguson. He was actually the leader, but he was the major, actually. My bad. He was a major, and he was pretty much a professional soldier, but he invented breech loaders to replace single shots. He wanted this because he didn't want his men to have to repeat loading all the time, and that would cut down on time for reloading their weapons. And on the Patriot side, we had Isaac Shelby. He was an experienced wilderness campaigner, and the thing is to remember, after he left the Revolutionary War, like after the war was over, he moved to Kentucky and became Kentucky's first state governor. I just thought I would bring that to your attention. But what happened was, we will go to the model right now to actually talk about the positions and everything. As you can see here with these tan guys here, this is where the Loyalist positions were before the battle began. And when you see this spot here, or these two lines here, this is the Americans, or the Patriots at the time, advancing up and drawing back the Loyalists. See what happened? The Patriots ran up King's Mountain and fired upon the Loyalists, and they did it very accurately, hiding behind trees and rocks. The reason why they did that is because they wanted to have cover and be able to fire upon the Loyalists and drive the Loyalists out. And that scared the Loyalists. Now, for Major Ferguson, whose headquarters was located right here, what happened was he tried to rally his troops, but he was wounded and shot while trying to rally his men. Some of the units, or the Loyalists, were so close to the Patriots that they engaged even with bayonet in close combat, but eventually were driven back up the hill. And when many of them waved the surrender flag, still the Patriots were firing upon them until Shelby said, "All right, that's enough, that's enough, that's enough!" Because many of the men were begging for mercy. And what Shelby wanted to do, he wanted to make sure his men were going to be very merciful to the enemy, because he wanted to make sure that they weren't being barbaric to their enemy. Now, as for the casualties, according to one of my sources, the Patriots lost 90 men, and the forces were pretty much equal. Each army had about 900 men, but back to the And as I stated, the casualties for the Patriots were 90 men. As for the Tories, or the Loyalists, they lost 319 men total that were either killed or wounded. and 700 of them were taken POW. Now, something that I would like to point out is that in this model, Ferguson could have gotten his men to use this area here as a retreat. As you can mainly see, there are no American forces there. But Ferguson wanted to make sure that he held King's Mountain, and he was hoping that since the slopes were so steep, and it was uneasy footing according to my two sources, he wanted to make sure that he could wipe out the Patriots. And by wiping out the Patriots, that way Ferguson could show General Cornwallis that he knew how to fight. And with knowing how to fight, maybe he could probably promote him from a major to maybe a colonel or a general himself. And this would also show other citizens in the Carolinas, like North and South Carolina, see, we need to side with Britain, because if these men were wiped out at King's Mountain, then how in the world are they going to be able to win the war? But in this case, it was a failure, and the Patriots knew what they were doing, and that's what led Ferguson and his men to be defeated. Now, my sources for this episode are, of course, American Revolution Battles and Leaders, and Almost a Miracle. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and don't forget to click subscribe and leave me your comments or any questions you have. Thank you for watching. Good day.